Released in 2026, The Eyes is a mystery crime thriller starring the stunning Shin Min-a in her first dual role as twin sisters. With its immersive atmosphere, tightly connected clues, constant reversals, obsessive stalking, and a woman fighting to survive alone, the film delivers suspense from beginning to end. The story begins with Seo-jin and her younger twin sister, Seo-in, who are both highly successful in their respective artistic fields. Unfortunately, the sisters suffer from hereditary optic neuropathy, a disease that will gradually leave them completely blind. Seo-in has already lost her sight, while Seo-jin's vision is becoming increasingly blurred. But her failing eyesight is not Seo-jin's greatest fear right now. She recently broke up with her boyfriend, Shin Min-a, who has become dangerously obsessed with her. On this particular day, Shin Min-a suddenly shows up at Seo-jin's home again. He has completely lost his grip on reality and blames their breakup for everything that has gone wrong in his life. Driven by the belief that no one else can have her if he cannot, Shin Min-a pulls out a knife and tries to kill Seo-jin. Seo-jin manages to lock herself inside a room, removes the blade from a photo trimmer, and prepares to defend herself. When the door is forced open, her blurred vision reveals Detective Ni Jae-young standing on the other side. Ni Jae-young has brought several officers with her, and they quickly subdue Shin Min-a. Seo-jin had already reported his threatening behavior and asked the police to monitor him closely. Although the immediate danger has passed, she still cannot relax. As Shin Min-a is taken away, he turns back and gives her a terrifying smile. The expression leaves Seo-jin convinced that he will come after her again. Just one day later, Shin Min-a cuts off his electronic ankle monitor and disappears.
네?
박서준 씨?
네.
일단 지금은 안전한 곳으로 피해 계세요. 제가 바로 갈게요.
To avoid another attack, Seo-jin asks Ni Jae-young to take her to Seo-in's remote home. She claims Shin Min will have trouble finding her there, but she is also worried because she has been unable to contact her sister. The two women soon arrive at the house. Seo-in's shoes are still sitting beside the door, but no one answers no matter how loudly Seo-jin calls. Already expecting the worst, Seo-jin searches the house and finds Seo-in dead, hanging from a beam. The discovery completely overwhelms her. After a preliminary investigation, Ni Jae-young explains that there are no signs of forced entry or an intruder. The police will therefore probably conclude that Seo-in took her own life. However, one detail does not make sense. Shortly before her death, Seo-in visited a hospital and received a corneal transplant. Seo-jin immediately begins to suspect that her sister was murdered. She knows Seo-in was strong-willed and cannot believe she would undergo surgery only to end her life soon afterward. Filled with grief and suspicion, Seo-jin holds a funeral for her sister. Before the ceremony is over, a tall man suddenly rushes towards Seo-in's portrait. He picks it up and begins kissing, hugging, and lifting it into the air. His father immediately stops him, scolds him, and forces him out of the funeral hall. The father, Gwang Cheol, explains that the man is his intellectually disabled son, Tae-ho. Tae-ho used to help Seo-in with her kiln-fired sculptures and could not control his emotions after learning about her death. As Seo-in's body is taken away for cremation, Seo-jin's grief turns into guilt. The sisters once lived together, and Seo-jin had to care for Seo-in after she became blind. As the days passed, the responsibility left Seo-jin feeling trapped, exhausted, and powerless. She eventually began wishing she could distance herself from the situation. The sensitive Seo-in realized how her sister felt and chose to move away so that she would not become a burden. Their relationship had remained strained ever since. Now believing that she failed her sister, Seo-jin decides to stay at Seo-in's home. She hopes to make amends while investigating whether Seo-in really took her own life. Ni Jae-young reluctantly stops trying to change her mind. Before leaving, she gives Seo-jin the phone that Seo-in always carried. She also explains that the house is outside her jurisdiction, so another detective named Do Hyuk will take over the case. Do Hyuk is already investigating Seo-in's death and will also be responsible for protecting Seo-jin. After Mi Jae-young leaves, Seo-jin turns on her sister's phone. Before she can check its contents, someone calls and asks whether Seo-in has finished the side dishes she received. The caller offers to cook more and bring them over if necessary. When Seo-jin explains who she is, The woman identifies herself as Seo-in's housekeeper. She had no idea that Seo-in was dead. The housekeeper then reveals that Seo-in often talked about how much she missed her estranged sister. She had many things she wanted to share with Seo-jin and hoped they could become close again. Hearing this brings Seo-jin to tears and deepens her guilt. The following day, Seo-jin enters the basement and suddenly sees a vision of Seo-in. Once she recovers from the shock, she begins searching for clues. Because the twins look identical, Seo-jin wonders whether standing where her sister died might help her understand what happened. She steps onto the stool beneath the beam and closes her eyes. The moment she opens them, a man appears in front of her and places a rope around her neck. Seo-jin quickly realizes that it is only a hallucination, but the disturbing visions continue. She then sees Seo-in sitting motionless in front of the kiln, drawn toward it. Seo-jin slowly opens the kiln and discovers an unfinished sculpture inside. The discovery strengthens her belief that Seo-in was murdered. She tells Mi Jae-un that her sister would never have died before completing a new piece. Mi Jae-un promises to pass the information to Do Hyuk and ask him to investigate it carefully. Hoping to learn more, Seo-jin listens to the voice messages on Seo-in's phone. Several remind Seo-in about her corneal transplant. The final message tells her not to forget a meeting at the swimming pool on the 13th. Since today is already the 13th, Seo-jin immediately goes there. To her surprise, the people waiting for Seo-in are a group of blind women discussing her death. As Seo-jin listens, an older woman with a keen sense of smell recognizes Seo-in's scent in the locker room. Seo-jin explains that she is Seo-in's twin and happens to be wearing her clothes. Before everyone can relax, the older woman senses that someone is watching them.
뒤에 끼고 온 사람은 뭐야? 경찰?
Believing the person may be Seo-in's killer, Seo-jin gives chase. She follows the figure into the pool's mechanical room, where the hallway lights suddenly go out. Seo-jin realizes that the mysterious person could also be Hyun Min. When she senses someone approaching, she immediately fires her stun gun. The person turns out to be a security guard, and Seo-jin is taken to the police station. There, Detective Do Hyuk formally introduces himself. Seo-jin believes she has finally found someone willing to help her. Instead, Do Hyuk agrees with Mi Jae-un that Seo-in probably took her own life. He thinks grief and emotional pressure are affecting Seo-jin's judgment. After having her suspicions repeatedly dismissed, the fiercely determined Seo-jin decides to investigate alone. Remembering the corneal transplant, she visits the doctor who performed Seo-in's surgery. The doctor tells her that the operation was successful, for reasons he cannot explain. However, Seo-in's vision suddenly deteriorated again afterward. Seo-jin finds it strange that her sister agreed to the procedure in the first place. Seo-in had always said that her visual impairment helped her create sculptures. The doctor suggests that something more important than her art may have changed her mind. Perhaps she wanted to see someone she loved again or travel and experience the world with her own eyes. That night, Dae-ho suddenly appears outside the house and frightens Seo-jin. This time, he behaves strangely and mutters incoherently about a man. Before Seo-jin can question him, Gwang Cheol arrives and takes his son away. After returning inside, Seo-jin realizes that the housekeeper may know something about Seo-in's private life. She calls and asks whether Seo-in had been seeing a man. The housekeeper says Seo-in denied having a boyfriend, but she believes there was someone. One day, she heard Seo-in mention that she was meeting a man at a hotel. Seo-jin visits that hotel the following morning. The front desk refuses to provide surveillance footage because of its privacy policy. Fortunately, a manager recognizes Seo-jin and mistakes her for Seo-in because the twins look identical. He thanks her for the sculpture she recently delivered, saying that it made the hotel look far more sophisticated. Seeing how clearly he remembers her sister, Seo-jin reveals her identity and explains why she came. The manager says the man with Seo-in wore a hat and sunglasses, making his face impossible to see. Because he tried so hard to hide his appearance, the manager suspected that he might be a celebrity. Before Seo-jin can ask more questions, a major fire suddenly breaks out inside the hotel. Security footage shows the manager trying to rescue a guest. A mysterious man then pushes him into one of the rooms. A violent explosion follows, and firefighters carry the manager out with severe burns across much of his body. The fire and attack clearly appear intended to stop Seo-jin's investigation. Clinging to a final trace of hope, Seo-jin and Do-hyuk rush to the hospital. By the time they arrive, the manager has already died. His death convinces Seo-jin that there is much more behind her sister's supposed suicide. After seeing Seo-jin nearly lose her own life, the frustrated Do-hyuk tells her to stop. He urges her to focus on helping the police capture Hyun-min instead of obsessing over Seo-in's death. Seo-jin understands his concern but refuses to abandon her suspicions. To prevent her from investigating alone, Do-hyuk finally agrees to help. He promises to use his authority as a detective to obtain the hotel's surveillance footage. The two soon arrive at the underground parking garage, not wanting Seo-jin inside the hotel if another fire occurs. Do-hyuk tells her to wait in the car. He has barely entered the building when Hyun-min suddenly calls her. Before Seo-jin can demand an explanation, Hyun-min appears directly outside the car. He pounds violently on the door as terror takes control of her. Unable to endure it any longer, Seo-jin screams at him to leave. Hyun-min suddenly disappears, making her think that he was another hallucination. A moment later, he reappears and attacks her for real. Fortunately, Do-hyuk finishes his investigation and returns before Hyun-min can kill her. Using his police training, Do-hyuk initially overpowers him. Hyun-min suddenly pulls out a knife, finds an opening, and stabs Do-hyuk in the abdomen. He then escapes before the backup officers arrive. The knife misses Do-hyuk's vital organs, but the investigation produces no useful evidence. Hotel staff reveal that the surveillance footage was destroyed in the fire and cannot be recovered. That night, Ni Jae-young drives Seo-jin back to Seo-in's house. The moment Ni Jae-young steps outside to answer a phone call, Seo-jin sees Hyun-min hiding inside. She soon realizes that he is another hallucination, but the constant fear has taken a heavy toll on her. Convinced that Hyun-min is hiding in the basement, Seo-jin grabs a kitchen knife and goes downstairs. When she sees the shadow of a person, she stabs it without hesitation. The figure is Dae-ho, who is already dead and hanging from the beam. Unlike Seo-in, Dae-ho has a suicide note inside his pocket. After investigating, Ni Jae-young tells Seo-jin that Dae-ho killed her sister. According to the police, Dae-ho was deeply infatuated with Seo-in but never received the affection he wanted. Unable to accept her rejection, he lost control and killed her. The guilt then became unbearable, causing him to take his own life. Even after hearing this explanation, Seo-jin cannot feel safe. As long as Hyun-min remains free, she knows that her own life is still in danger. Her doctor then warns that her eyesight will continue deteriorating unless she receives a corneal transplant. Wanting to see clearly enough to protect herself from Hyun-min, Seo-jin immediately agrees. The operation is completed successfully. However, the doctor strongly warns her not to remove the bandages because an infection could ruin the results. Temporarily unable to see, Seo-jin calls Seo-in's housekeeper and asks her to help. The housekeeper prepares a large meal, completes the chores, and thoughtfully feeds Seo-jin every bite. After the housekeeper leaves, danger closes in again. A violent storm triggers a nearby landslide that night. The two officers assigned to protect Seo-jin are ordered to assist with the rescue effort. The moment their patrol car leaves, Hyun-min emerges from the bushes. He smashes a window and climbs into the house. Realizing that an intruder has entered, Seo-jin activates the alarm on her emergency watch. She hides in the darkness and tries not to make a sound. Knowing the police may not return in time, she uses her familiarity with the house to avoid Hyun-min. Seo-jin eventually escapes through the yard and reaches the road. As she shouts for help, Gwang Cheol arrives and says he has discovered the truth about his son's death. Ever since Dae-ho's body was found, Gwang Cheol has believed that something was wrong. Using clues from the printed suicide note, he checked surveillance footage from an internet cafe. The recording revealed what really happened to Dae-ho. A man of few words, Gwang Cheol presses the printed evidence into Seo-jin's hands. He tells her that it contains the truth about the deaths and asks her to take it to the police. The moment he finishes speaking, Hyun-min appears and attacks him. While the two men fight, Seo-jin quickly finds somewhere to hide. Still terrified, she is found by the housekeeper, who has not yet gone far. Seo-jin desperately begs for help, and the housekeeper immediately takes her to the car. They speed toward the police station, but Seo-jin has actually fallen into a much greater trap. Judging by the way Hyun-min continues chasing them, Gwang Cheol has already been killed. To calm Seo-jin, the housekeeper hands her a thermos and urges her to drink some water. A few minutes after drinking it, Seo-jin loses consciousness. The housekeeper, whose face the film has carefully hidden until now, is clearly not the kind woman she pretended to be. Seo-jin wakes inside an unfamiliar room. Before she can understand what happened, she briefly hears Hyun-min's urgent voice outside the door. The voice mysteriously falls silent after only a few seconds. Seo-jin then feels the papers Gwang Cheol gave her and remembers that they contain the truth. She also remembers the doctor's warning, but knows that her life matters more than her eyesight. Seo-jin removes the bandages and slowly opens her eyes. Fortunately, the surgery has worked, and the room gradually comes into focus. She immediately turns on the light and reads the printed evidence. The contents leave her completely stunned. The housekeeper killed Dae-ho and is actually a man. Before Seo-jin can decide what to do, the housekeeper opens the door and enters. There is no time to replace the bandages, so Seo-jin carefully controls her expression. She pretends that her vision has not returned and that she still cannot see. The highly observant housekeeper does not believe her.
내가 언니였지.
Realizing she cannot continue stalling, Seo-jin asks to use the bathroom and change her clothes. The suspicious housekeeper leaves but watches her through the crack in the door. Seo-jin notices him in time and continues pretending to be blind. She then sees the housekeeper add a sleep-inducing substance to a cup of tea. While his back is turned, Seo-jin leaves the bathroom and switches their cups on the table. Despite her careful performance, the housekeeper notices a slight change in her expression through the window's reflection. Determined to expose her, he takes Seo-jin to the refrigerator and deliberately opens it in front of her. He watches closely to see whether she reacts to what is inside.
수술 잘 됐네. 싸가지 없는 년들 누가 쌍둥이 아니랄까봐.
His words reveal that he is a man with another personality who believes himself to be a mother. Seo-jin plays along and begins talking to him about ordinary family matters. When his attention slips, she suddenly attacks the wound on his abdomen. The mysterious housekeeper is Detective Do Hyuk, the man who had supposedly been helping Seo-jin. At last, the truth about his past is revealed. Do Hyuk grew up in a single-parent household with a deeply abusive mother. She frequently mistreated and beat him throughout his childhood. After years of suffering, Do Hyuk finally lost control when she berated him one day. In a burst of rage, he killed his mother with a knife. The overwhelming guilt caused his mother's identity to emerge as a second personality inside him. Before her death, Do Hyuk's mother had worked as Seo-in's housekeeper. To prevent the blind Seo-in from realizing anything was wrong, Do Hyuk fully assumed his mother's identity. He treated Seo-in like his own daughter and cared for her with obsessive devotion. By doing this, he believed he could repair the emotional damage caused by his childhood. Everything changed when Seo-in decided to receive a corneal transplant. She wanted to see Seo-jin again and completely repair their damaged relationship. The intensely possessive Do Hyuk could not accept that Seo-in intended to leave him. He also feared that she might regain her sight and discover his crime. To keep her from leaving and learning the truth, Do Hyuk killed her. Dae-ho became another target because he had witnessed what happened. After this painful memory ends, Do Hyuk suddenly sees a hallucination of his mother. As he becomes lost in the vision, Seo-jin strikes him with a vase and runs toward the door. Unfortunately, Do Hyuk has already locked it. Trapped inside, Seo-jin quickly studies the objects around her and forms a plan. Before the enraged Do Hyuk can reach her, she switches off the power. She then uses the flash from a camera to find her way through the darkness and attack him. Although Seo-jin briefly gains the advantage, She is not physically strong enough to overpower him. Just as Do Hyuk is about to kill her, Ni Jae-in leads a team of officers into the room. Realizing that everything is over, Do Hyuk retreats into his mother's personality. He curls up shyly in the corner as the officers surround him. Under the beams of their flashlights, he slowly returns to his own identity. Thinking about the lifetime he has spent trapped in pain, Do Hyuk decides to free himself. He draws a knife across his own throat and ends his life. With the case finally closed, Seo-jin fully recognizes the mistake she made with her sister. She places her family's ashes together so they will no longer be separated. Seo-jin also proudly displays the sculpture her sister created inside her own room. By keeping it close, she hopes to feel that Seo-in is still beside her. And that brings the entire story to an end. See you next time.